what to do with Dr. Craig Considine. Because last time when he came to our event, and that is 4 or 5 years back, he delivered a speech. So tonight, I'm thinking to change the format, and that is in a form of dialogue. But let me just give you a little bit background about Dr. Craig Considine. I don't recall to be exact, but around 2006 or 7, possibly, a professor from Washington University named Dr. Akbar Ahmad came to New York City to interview me while I was an imam at the 96th Street Masjid. And Dr. Akbar was the former ambassador of Pakistan to UK, and he became a professor and the chair of Ibn Khaldun Islamic Studies at Washington University. And then he came to New York to interview me about Muslims in America. At that time, he was accompanied by 2 of his students, a male and a female student. And that male student was then Craig Considine. He was young and still young today. I did not pay attention to him. He was a student, by the way. I pay attention to his professor. Right. So we got disconnected. And some years later, I read an article about the beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ written by a professor of Rice University named Craig Considine. It didn't come to my mind that this was a student who met me many years back. So I tried to find who this professor is. So we got connected, and he said, Imam, I was the one who met you in 2006 or 7 with Akbar Ahmad. And since then we got connected, by the way. We invited him 5 years ago to come here, and now he is here with us tonight. Brothers and sisters, I just wanted to say that I've watched this brother growing in his scholarship of Islam, and particularly on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And let me just tell you, he is Catholic, he is Christian in faith, but he believed in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He loved Prophet Muhammad as a role model. Not only that, he promoted him, not only promoting him, he defended the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the honor of the Prophet. And he's ready to be attacked for that, because he defended the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as Muslims, on behalf of our community, I'd like to thank you for such a bold stand to defend our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So let's begin by an opening remarks for 5-7 minutes. Yeah. Please do.
Sure. Imam Ali, thank you so much. Imam Ali is a role model to me, and he's also emerged as a friend. And I had the pleasure of listening to him this morning over our new tradition of going to IHOP together, an old American tradition. I would also like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to be here this evening. It's been a real pleasure to get to know new friends and see old friends as well. And I think it's important maybe for a minute here to give you a little bit of a backdrop, because some may not know my journey, which Imam Ali mentioned. So I am Catholic. I was born right outside of Boston in Needham, Massachusetts. Some of you may be familiar with that. Irish dad, Italian mom, went to Catholic school. The town of Needham, not very diverse. Even to this day, we're looking at about 90% white people of Western European ancestry. We had a couple of synagogues in town, Temple Aliyah and Temple Beth Shalom, but we didn't have any mosques. And I didn't know any Muslims. The first time I really saw Islam and Muslims as words, literally words, was on 9/11 when I was 15. And I had absolutely no context to make sense of what happened on that day, but also how it was being framed. Because Islam was literally being attacked, and Muslims were too. When it came to go to college, I actually was a basketball player. People often forget this, but I don't have any game anymore. It's gone. But I decided to transfer to Washington, D.C. because I was interested in what was happening in Iraq. And I was concerned with what was happening in Iraq in 2003 when the United States invaded. And I knew something was wrong, and I wanted to figure out what was wrong. So I transferred to American University, where I had the great honor and privilege of being a student of Ambassador Akbar Ahmed, a brilliant anthropologist. And on that first day of class at American, he didn't talk about Al-Qaeda or terrorism or jihad. He talked about knowledge. And he shared a hadith: the ink of the scholar is more sacred than the blood of the martyr. And right there, something clicked in my head and in my heart, and I went on a journey of scholarship, of knowledge, and it just happened to be Islam. I wasn't searching for religion personally at the time. A lot of people think that I came into Islam because I was looking for my own faith. I came through, it was like politics, and then through the power of knowledge, what knowledge can do up here and here. So, the last 2 books I've published, I don't want to bore you with my academic background, but the last 2 books that I published focus on the life of Prophet Muhammad. The last one, it's called People of the Book, Prophet Muhammad's Encounters with Christians, published by Oxford and Hurst. This is a biography of Prophet Muhammad's life, told through the prism of his interactions with Christians. But the book before that, 2020, called The Humanity of Muhammad, A Christian View, I want to share 3 things that I found in writing this book. The first one is that Prophet Muhammad in 622 engaged in what I refer to in the book as civic nation building. And that needs to be distinguished from its opposite, which is racial state building. A civic nation is one in which anyone can belong to. What makes you connect to the nation are the values, even political values, not the color of your skin or your ethnic background. It's a civic nation, civic rights. In 622, he entered into a pact, a confederation with non-Muslims, with multiple pagan tribes and multiple Jewish tribes who were fighting each other for generations. Muhammad comes in as the mediator, the problem solver. So you can imagine, what did he do? He brings all of the warring tribes together in a big banquet table almost and say, let's figure out how to move forward. How can we as a community unite all of these tribes? And they come up with the Constitution of Medina, arguably the first written democratic constitution, arguably, in the world. In this country, ours is 1776. It guarantees religious freedom, the right to own private property, the right to vote, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the right to participate in a democratic government. That was enabled in 1776. Obviously, there were flaws and implementation issues with that. But Muhammad did it in 622. If you read the Constitution of Medina, it's providing some of the very core foundational values that this country is founded upon. And that's powerful. And it's powerful not just in honor of Prophet Muhammad, a great man, and the other people that he was working with, but it's a very simple example to combat the Islamophobia, the clash of civilizations, this idea that American values and Islamic values are incompatible. That's false. So the second concept, that was civic nation. The second one is racial equality. Prophet Muhammad not merely being a non-racist person. He wasn't merely a non-racist. He was an anti-racist. He actively took measures in his life, personally and publicly, to liberate people. So he wasn't just, this standoffish non-racist. If I ask everyone in here, who in here is a non-racist, I would hope everyone would say, yeah. But when we say anti-racist, it's completely different. It activates things. And we know multiple examples in Muhammad's life of him not merely being a non-racist, an anti-racist, freeing Bilal ibn Rabah, freeing him, liberating him, purchasing his freedom, using your resources to liberate one individual. And let me say this with Bilal. The best part of that situation, Muhammad cuts his shackles, his chains, literally frees him. But the most important thing Muhammad did, he created an environment and a society to allow Bilal to flourish. There's a huge difference there. So he allowed him to be socially mobile, and we need to remember that. The third point, and I'll end with this, Prophet Muhammad was not merely engaging in religious tolerance. You hear this term religious tolerance, and it's a good word. We want to tolerate each other. But like what he did with the anti-racism, he went further. He engaged in religious pluralism, which is what we refer to as the energetic engagement with religious diversity. I'll repeat it. The energetic engagement with religious diversity. Muhammad knew that if you engage in that religious diversity, you can break stereotypes, but more importantly, you can build diverse religious communities together. Right, so we're no longer looking at each other as Christians, as Jews, as Muslims, and all of these different categories. No, we're just one big community. And I think that's what Muhammad was envisioning when he was talking about the Ummah. So I could, again, talk about the other chapters of the book. There's one on women's rights. There's one on the golden rule. So I really tried to translate these really profound teachings of Muhammad in a way that is easily digestible and sociological.
Thank you, Dr. Considine. Going back to what you mentioned about the interaction in your book, people of the book, Prophet Muhammad's encounter with Christians, you talk about a lot about the treaties between Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Christian leaders, and I think you have even a way back when you talk about Muhammad when he was only 11 or 12 years old, when he met a monk, a Christian monk in Basra. So can you talk more about how Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was basically projected by the Christian leaders to be the future prophet? You know, by some Christian leader themselves. I don't know if you mentioned about Khadija's cousin.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I didn't read it. But by the way, can you talk more about that? How Christian leaders of the past acknowledge that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a prophet, and he's going to be a prophet.
So the first chapter of the book starts in the year 582. Muhammad is 12 years old. He's a young boy. He's traveling in trading caravans with his uncle, Abu Talib. And they are journeying on these caravans through Christian lands, diverse lands. We're talking about the Byzantine Empire. So from a very young age, Muhammad was having a lot of interactions with Christians, a lot more than people think. And in 582, he meets Bahira the monk. He's said to be a Nestorian monk. It's a sect of Christianity. Again, how much time do you have to explain Nestorianism? But the Islamic sources tell us that Bahira recognized Muhammad's greatness through various measures when Muhammad was 12. And that there's something quite beautiful about that, just being able to see beauty and greatness and honor in someone who doesn't fit into your kind of identity categories. Another significant person who happened to be Christian that Muhammad met is in the year 610. So Muhammad is 40 years old now. He has the revelations on Mount Hira, which is the beginning of the Quran, as we know. And what does Muhammad do, right? He is visited by Angel Gabriel. He's shook. He thinks something extraordinary has happened. He goes down to Mecca. He sees Khadija first. Khadija reassures him. The second person Muhammad meets is Waraka ibn Nafal, who is Khadija's uncle, who was Christian. And it was that second Christian that I mentioned, Waraka, who is confirming also Muhammad's, let's refer to it as greatness, that he was destined to do extraordinary things. Waraka refers to Muhammad as like a new Moses, that he's coming with a new law, a new way of life. So we have many other encounters that are beautiful stories, really. And it really serves as useful tools when we talk about Christian-Muslim relations today.
I think the other encounter that I wanted to speak a little bit about the first immigration of Muslims to the Christian kingdom, and how you can relate this to America being as a home of immigrants, and how the king received the newly established community. Even it was not a community established in Mecca, but a very weak Christian community, Muslim community went to this country, and they were received very well by the king. Compared to America as a home of immigrants, how do you see that? How can you relate that?
So 615 now, we're doing a little bit of chronology, but now we're in 615. So 5 years after Muhammad starts receiving the Quranic revelations, the early Ummah community is being persecuted. The persecution is getting so difficult that Muhammad is fearful for the future of his community. So he decides, and you could just think about being a leader of a community and having to do the following. You go to your family, your friends, and you're basically like, you guys, you need to leave. It's not safe for you. So Muhammad organizes a group of people, and he tells them, leave Mecca, cross the desert, go to Port al-Shuaibah on the Red Sea, get in a boat, cross the Red Sea, and then it's there in Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, where a Christian king will protect you. That is a pretty extraordinary thing to sell, isn't it? Muhammad doing that. That's extraordinary. And it was a Christian that Muhammad put his faith in. That's extraordinary as well. And what happens? Of course, the story proceeds further, and we have beautiful encounters where Prophet Muhammad's companions are reading verses of the Quran, and the Christian king is said to have been so moved that his eyes wept until his beard was wet. So the eyes are dripping down. But most importantly here is that King Ibn Abjar was really willing to sacrifice his political well-being, his empire's well-being, to protect an immigrant group. And I would hope that the better side of our country understands that we have always been a nation of immigrants, and I hope to God we always will be.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ established a civic nation state. There are some Muslims believe that Muhammad has come not as a statesman. He's just a prophet, he's a religious leader. It's nothing to do with the country, nothing to do with the nation. There are some others who said that we have to have a certain, narrowed and rigid concept of state in Islam. How do you see Medina being the first ever in human history as a civic nation state, with the constitution, with all rights guaranteed, but more importantly, as I mentioned last night at the Jamaica Muslim Center, that the word Medina is not only to be translated into the word city, more than just city, because the word Medina comes from Dana Yadinu Dinun, and it means ita'ah, it means obedience. And that's the reason why the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he moved to Medina, the first one that he established is establishing a mosque. Because this city is not only buildings, not only technologies, not only science, but it's about obedience to God. So mosque basically is a symbol of the obedience to Almighty God. But it's not the point to discuss here, Craig. The point is that how do you see, the Prophet Muhammad's model state that can be implemented in our modern era?
So he was a revolutionary as well. When we talk about his prophethood, obviously it needs to be rightly recognized, but when Muhammad is in Medina in 622 proposing and implementing this new idea, which is a multiracial, multi-faith, multicultural community, that was a big threat to the establishment. It was a bold and radical idea, and arguably When you look at the founding documents of our country, even the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All human beings are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Beautiful, beautifully written. Challenging to implement, as we've noticed over American history. But what do we see in those words? We see a lot of potential for things like religious pluralism, for racial equality, and for this idea that belonging to a nation is not predicated on a certain religion, a certain race, a certain ethnicity. So in a way, it's colorblind. And it's so challenging. You know, the Constitution of Medina had a hard time surviving because of political issues, but this is God's great challenge to us as humans. You know, it's really overcoming our racism, overcoming our perceived differences, and having to unite as a nation around ideas and principles. That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of work. It requires knowledge, it requires understanding, it requires meeting with each other. Because the difference in the diversity could be seen as like a threat to you. You don't know about it. But that's not what we do in America. That's not what makes us belong to a nation. We're all connected in this room, even if you're not a US citizen. You're here, and that's important. And I have the luxury right now of looking out at all of this diversity. And this is what it's about: multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious.
You know, Craig, one of the big issue that we have in the community, and I mean Muslim community, and also among the non-Muslim brothers and sisters around us, is about gender equality. And when we talk about civic nation states, gender equality cannot be excluded. More than half of the Muslim populations are women. If you see this room here, mostly women. And that's most of Indonesians are women are here tonight. But the discussion among the Muslims themselves is about how to position a woman in the society. So I want you to briefly talk about how do you see Prophet Muhammad treated the woman? Because oftentimes we mix between what is religion and what is culture. And we don't distinguish between what we follow in terms of culture and what we follow in terms of religion. Now, as a non-Muslim who studied Islam, you know, honestly, without any bias, how do you see Prophet Muhammad treated the woman?
So I mentioned with Civic Nation, this is a revolutionary idea. It's something unprecedented. And it shook the system. People were shocked that Muhammad was embarking upon this new political project. And I think that same level of eye-openness occurred when people started thinking about how Muhammad was treating women, because he was liberating them as well. He was liberating them. And I think a lot of his value for women had to do with the relationship that he had with Khadija. 15 years his elder. Khadija, by the way, asking Muhammad to marry her. Khadija being, for a long time there, arguably more powerful than Prophet Muhammad. So that person alone, Khadija, and who she was, tells you a lot about what Muhammad thinks about women. And he did other things too. I mean, he ended female infanticide. Think about that. And that was a radical idea. For those who may not know what it is, it's when little girls, God forbid, I have one little girl and another coming in February.
If any of you wanted to ask questions to our friend, Dr. Craig Considine. But before that, let me ask you this one. You have done a lot, searching about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You read about Islam. You have, engaged Muslims from different backgrounds: Turkish, Indonesian, Bengalis. You came to Jamaica Muslim Center, Middle Eastern Africans. And I'm sure if you are honest enough, you'll say, why Muslims are not really honest in following their prophets. So there are two questions here. Number one is, how do you see Prophet Muhammad influences the world, global world today? And why Muslims still fail to influence the world? Muhammad is rahmatan lil alameen, is mercy to all humanity, but we don't play the role as mercy to all humanity. And what is the reason? What are the factors that Muslims are still fail to follow Muhammad as role model? And this is an advice, and be honest to advise us.
So with the first question, the word that came to my mind was hospitality. I think one of the reasons why I've had so much appreciation for Prophet Muhammad and let's say the Islamic tradition at large is because I've spent a lot of time with people who happen to be Muslim, and they not only take care of me, but I feel like I have a connection to them. And I think a lot of that happens because of care and hospitality. So we see who Prophet Muhammad is through you, through all of you. And I hope you would think the same on the Christian front, through Jesus and me. And let me say this, one more year for you. In the year 630, when Muhammad was with the Christians of Najran in the mosque in Medina, the Christians of Najran were allowed space in the masjid to engage in their prayer. And Muhammad said, you're in a space to pray, just pray in here. And so think about the message he was sending to his guests in doing that. That's another extraordinary idea, letting Christians pray in the masjid. So what was he saying? Hospitality is an act of faith. It really goes back to taking care of people, making people feel whole. That's what he was really ultimately about. Now the question is, why don't Muslims follow it? Or why doesn't anyone follow general goodness? And I think it's a combination of ignorance. And I don't mean that in a kind of book way. Ignorance is like lack of exposure, lack of real world experiences. And then I would say fear. Ignorance and fear feed off of each other. And people just don't know any better, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. All right, I think it's sufficient for me, but I'm sure that many of you are so curious. You have curiosity in minds. So I give you a chance if any of you wanted to ask any questions. You know, one of the things that many people ask Dr. Considine is, you know, if you do believe in Muhammad, you do believe in Islam as a teaching from God through Muhammad, you do believe in the revelation of the Holy Quran, why you don't declare your faith as a Muslim? And I'm not hesitant to say he is a Muslim by heart, you know, and because he is, and that is the virtue of Islam. When you have knowledge, you have a brain, you will know what is the truth is. And that's what Dr. Considine, and the thing that I love about him is because he learned it and he understands it. You know, many of us are born Muslims, not necessarily that we know better than him. When you talk about the history of Muhammad Sallam in details, you know a lot. You know, he's a professor, he doesn't speak like myself or like many of Maulanas around. You know, looks like he's very slow because he's a professor. By the way, academic. I'm not a public speaking in front of the public, you know, like myself, but his knowledge is so deep. And if you just read his book, I bring to the newest one is People of the Book, Prophet Muhammad's Encounter with Christians, and the other one is The Humanity. I have 30 books for you to buy tonight. The Humanity of Muhammad, a Christian view. Most of his writing is taken, I think, from this book, small book, edited by John Andrew Morrow. And I read this book a long time ago. So when I read his book, most of things that he mentioned in his book is taken from this small book. Mm-hmm. So now, you see, this is the virtue of Islam, that when you have knowledge, you will know what is the right things. And so that is the question, basically, that I still want you to answer.
I will, yeah.
When the people wanted to ask that question. They're curious. If you believe in Islam, you believe in Muhammad, you believe in the Quran as a revelation given to Muhammad to be conveyed to humanity, why you don't declare as a Muslim?
So I was in Pittsburgh recently, and at the end of a talk at Duquesne University, someone who was an imam asked this question. It was a lot more serious, and I used Imam Shamsi Ali's reference to me as a Muslim, because last time we were here, you actually said, I see him as a Muslim, and I have no problem with Imam Ali saying that. Depends on how you define what it means to be a Muslim. Because this person who asked me this question was really heavy in like doctrine and theology. You had to believe this, you had to believe this, you had to believe this, you had to read this, you had to pray this way. That's a lot for me. I'm 37 years old. I can't learn a new religion right now. I have a lot on my plate. But if you start identifying Muslim identity in a little bit more abstract ways, like it means Muslim identity is linked to hospitality, justice, racial equality. I'll say this, Muslim with a lowercase m rather than a capital M is one way of putting it. But let me say another thing too, in all seriousness, because some people do think this is a serious question. When I was introduced to this broad topic of Islam, I wasn't searching for faith. I wasn't searching for it. I wasn't, I was probably lost. I was 15. A lot of people who are 15 are lost. But it was through this idea that the world was in conflict and the world was clashing. And I've always tried to position myself in the middle, to be a bridge, to be a vehicle, to be the type of Christian that can go to communities like this and then go back and be in between. We need these type of bridge builders, you know? So maybe it's better that I'm Christian. I'm not sure. And then I'll say this, if I did convert, that would probably be a big story and I'd probably have a lot more followers, but it's not going to happen. I'm not going to do it. Never say never, but you know.
Can I give the microphone to Dr. Khandaka from the other side? Yes, briefly, brother. Ask your question.
You just mentioned that you better be Christian and make a bridge between the Christianity. Have you faced any criticism by the Christians that why you are exploring Islam, not converting, number one?
Yes.
Number two, there are people who believe on that much about other religion, they do convert, vice versa, from Islam to Christianity and Christian to Islam. That is my question number two.
Okay. So, first one, there's multiple layers to the animosity and the pushback. It comes from everywhere. It used to come a lot more from what scholars might refer to as the Islamophobia industry. So these are individuals who are like anti-Muslim, like bigots, essentially, who make and profit off of spewing hatred of Islam and Muslims. And these are very influential leaders, bloggers. They're in DC, they're all around the country, and they influence politicians. And there's been significant backlash there for years, and there's a lot of Christians in there, predominantly Christians. Now, I've had other Christians who I have a great deal of respect for, who have questioned my Christian faith, basically saying, you've lost the plot. You can't be Christian anymore. And maybe it's the rebellious nature in me, but I push back at that because who is going to tell me what my Christian identity is? I mean, when I pray Christian prayers. When I go to a place of worship to pray, it's a church. Why do I have to describe my doctrine to individuals? This is my belief. My belief isn't harming anyone. So there's also a lot of backlash from Muslims. I think a lot of Muslims don't realize how much backlash I get from other Muslims. So that's difficult too. The second question, can you repeat it? I think it needs to be reiterated.
The second question was, since so many people do convert after getting knowledge about the other religion, vice versa, Islam and Christianity. So since you are working as a bridge, the question actually was same question, what's stopping you to not to cross the bridge and embrace Islam?
So theologically, one thing I think that we could identify as like normative Islam is the idea that Prophet Muhammad is the final prophet. Now, as a Christian, I say this. I don't believe that he could be the last prophet. I don't think my understanding of God, God is eternal, God is universal. God is not done sending messengers to people. This is the rational in me, and I try to be rational when I think about religion. So theologically, there's that. But I think ultimately, why are we so curious about, asking people to convert? I mean, it's just...
Dr. Craig Considine,
I have the choice, that's right.
As we talk about the king of Najashi, the king of Ethiopia at the time, who was tearing upon listening to the Quran, I could see that Dr. Craig Considine is at that moment in that position. Now that he loves Islam, he is sympathetic to Al-Islam, not only but also he defends Al-Islam. He defends the Prophet. If you just follow his social media, Twitter, how he got attacked from different sides. From the Muslims who see that he has some agenda.
Yeah.
He has some hidden agenda. And from his own community who say, no, you're not Christian anymore. It's not an easy. But because of that scholarship that he has, he held very strongly, highly, he had the position. So I just pray that maybe you are in the position of Najashi.
Could I ask a question?
All right. Yeah.
If I did convert,
Okay.
would you think of me differently? Would you treat me differently? You would. Definitely.
Dr.
Okay.
Siddiq Rahman.
Okay, thank you for nice briefing everything. It looks like you learned a lot, you studied a lot. My question to you, as your experience and your study, what's the mission difference?
All similar, all revolutionaries in their own way, all engaging in what we were talking about yesterday. There's an old Hebrew saying called tikkun olam, to heal a fractured world, to repair the world. I think Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad were all engaging in that. And I think with Jesus and Muhammad, when we talk about the people who were living out on the periphery of their societies, they were different types of people. So Jesus was dealing a lot with people who were deformed. They had diseases. There was prostitutes, people that had been completely neglected and left aside. Muhammad had similar groups, but they were different. Orphans. Muhammad cared a great deal about orphans, and we're not saying that Jesus didn't, but different historical contexts had different peripheries. But ultimately, at least with Jesus and Muhammad, they were trying to bring those groups in the periphery, bring them back into that fold to make them feel like they belong. I think they all ushered in new laws, of course. I mean, this is an easy one, right? So Moses is providing the foundation for a lot of it. Jesus is coming, I think, with a different type of law. It's like almost like an unwritten law, and then Muhammad comes back in and kind of recodifies, as Moses did, to really kind of layer it out. But Jesus' law, I think, at least for me, it's an unconditional love type law. Unconditional love, turn the other cheek. I often tell people it's one of the hardest things in the world is to be a Christian. You have to love your enemies. It's a different type of law, but they're all coming with a completely new vision to reroute not only our societies, but our minds and our hearts too.
The last one, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Craig, for taking your time for doing research. Sometimes I feel sitting here that you know more about our beloved Prophet than we do as a Muslim. Thank you, Dr. Shamsi, for having this meaningful dialogue. My question to you, doing this research and getting to know, every bit of, Prophet, legacy and, boyhood and in prophethood, was there any time that you felt that you wanted to convert to Islam? And then again, you felt that because backlashes from your, religion that hold you back. That happened to our prophet, own uncle. All uncle, our beloved prophet wanted his uncle to convert, to take the Shahada. But he was to a point that he wanted to. But because of his backlashes from his own group that he had, that he didn't want to let go his religion. So I just wanted to know that, because, so many people in the world, getting to know our prophet life and legacy, and the work he has done for the humanity, converted. You done such wonderful, research on him. Was there a point that you felt that you wanted to convert, but you hold yourself back because of backlashes? Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Regarding your question of this kind of big eureka moment of whether I was at like a crossroads or there was like two doors, and whether it was like Islam or something else, I've had a moment, but Islam wasn't part of the option. I was basically an agnostic. I was not anything. And things happen in life. People are critically thinking. And I said, I need to go back to I need faith. I need religion. And I knew how to pray. I knew where to go. I knew what Bible verses I liked. I knew what kind of relationship I could have with my community. So I often say this: Prophet Muhammad helped bring me back to my faith. And that's a beautiful thing in itself, right? So it's not about this religion or that religion. How about just, hey, we have someone who put me back on a good path. That's good enough.
Great. Okay. Many people raise hand now, so I think I'd like to give you, and then the last one is Professor. Sisters. Let me. I would like to welcome Brother Ralph Abdul Qadir, who is the former Chief Department of Peace Cooperation Operation of the United Nations. So if you see the United Nations, he's a general from Egypt, and his beloved wife from Lebanon, Sister Salwa Qadir, who is the founder and president of International Federation for Peace and Sustainable Development. This husband and wife, you can see them everywhere. When you meet with the presidents, with ministers, prime ministers, they are there. These are the people. Thank you for coming.
First of all, I give you thanks and appreciate. Last night you was in the JMC, Jamaica Muslim Center, because you wrote a book regarding the beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And last night I supposed to ask you, but I did not get the chance. So anyway, my curiosity, or this is my humble request ask to you: did you read the Quran?
I've never had a moment where I'm like, all right, I'm finally going to do it. This is going to be the moment I convert all of a sudden. No. But I mean, invariably, yeah, just based on my scholarship. But I've never had like a study of it where I'm like, okay, I have 1 month.
I see.
And I'm going to get through this in 1 month. I mean, it would take a proper study. And what I love about it, the two most frequent words in the Quran are mercy and compassion. I mean, that fits right up my alley when I talk about what it means for me to be a Christian. Mercy and compassion. So that's a beautiful thing. And of course, Mary has her own chapter. And as a Catholic, I'm Catholic. That's extra special, because Mary is a little extra special for Catholics. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. The reason I ask you, because one of the wife of our Prophet, Hazrat Aisha Siddiqa radhiyallahu anha, she is one of the wife of the Prophet. At that time, some companion asked her about the Prophet, how is the Prophet? Then she told, did you read the Quran? Because the Quran is the life of Prophet.
The akhlaq, the character of the Prophet.
So
Thank you.
I wish you will read the Quran and you'll gain more knowledge.
Yeah, he reads a lot.
Thank you very much.
He reads a lot. All right, the last one is Professor Fadam Shari.
That I think why you didn't convert to Islam. Because you still not believe that Muhammad is the last prophet.
Okay.
That I caught it. And because you think the Creator, why this one? Don't you think that the Creator of this universe have authority to make anything?
Religion is what God's given, and God has the authority to make someone first, second, third, and the last. So why you don't believe that God has made Prophet Muhammad as the final prophet? That's his question.
So maybe he did for a specific tradition. To say that he was the last prophet is a very Abrahamic way of looking at prophethood. That prophets only come from Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. I have a hard time rationally thinking that in 5,000 years from now, God willing, we're still here as a human race, that there wouldn't have been these type of figures, these type of prophets. And I think it's healthy for a society to think that prophecy actually isn't dead, that it's alive. I think it keeps us fresh, keeps us on our toes. These are the reformers. You know, think about when they told Muhammad, him claiming that he was a final prophet. It's like with Christians when Jesus is saying that I'm the son of God, completely threw him out. But anyways, I think I've said enough about my personal views. But they're interesting, and I don't back away from these questions either. By the way, I'm happy to talk about them.
I just wanted to say that searching the truth is a process. And Dr. Craig Considine, being a scholar, has continued to search and to study more and more and more. You know, even to the point to find the absolute and ultimate guidance, we Muslims ask Allah every day, Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Oh God, guide us to the straight path. Because this is a process, a continuity in the process to finding the absolute truth. And I'm sure that Dr. Considine is in the process, in the continuous process of finding an ultimate truth in his life.
That's true.
And yeah,
that is
that's
absolutely
right.
true. Yeah.
But let me end with this because of the time. I just wanted to remind my Muslim brothers and sisters.
Brother Shamsi,
Yes.
before you finish,
Okay.
can I ask you one thing, Craig?
Yes.
After he gets the prophecy without the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do you believe in that?
I believe
You
it
believe
was.
in that? Okay, good.
Yeah, I believe
now,
it was
I
divine
heard
intervention.
And also he was asking me the question that you did not believe that Prophet Muhammad is the last Messiah. Now, what makes you think about that if you believe in that, the previous thing?
For the
That is my
same
last
reason,
question.
as I mentioned, I believe God delivers prophets who are divinely inspired throughout history, and it's going to remain that way.
And that was the end of it. God revealed that ayah to Muhammad that he will be the last prophet. That God is the one who revealed that verse to Prophet Muhammad that he would be the last prophet.
Okay.
So if you believe in that, I think you should believe in that. And after this, that will be the end of the question session.
We are
Thank
going
you.
to invite Dr. Craig Considine next time to a specific dialogue and discussion on this particular topic. Raising fund is still on the way, I think. But by the way, yeah, I texted him, and hopefully it's on the way. But by the way, Dr. Considine, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. You know, as a Muslim and a person who directly involved, particularly after the 9/11, I could feel the appreciation for you, for what you have done for us. You know, I'm not in the position to say that you have to say Shahada. You have to declare your Ashhadu an la ilaha. No. Because number one, for Muslim, you have to understand, in the Quran, there is no directly says that Udu'u ila al-Islam, invite to Islam. What Allah says in the Quran is Udu'u ila sabili rabbika, invite to the way of your Lord. And when we talk about way of Lord, there are interpretations here. And we can discuss that in 24 hours, 30 hours, no end. But by the way, we appreciate, to this point, I'm very much thankful and appreciative of Dr. Considine, who considers himself as a Muslim apologist.
Yes, I am. I have no
A
problem.
Muslim
I have no problem with
apologist.
that.
It
Yeah.
means a Muslim who defends Islam,
Yeah,
or
no
a non-Muslim who defends Islam, a non-Muslim who defends the Prophet, a non-Muslim who defends our community, in fact. And so for that, For that, Nusantara Foundation have decided that the Nusantara Award of 2002 is given or awarded to our Dr. Considine. Please do bring me that plaque.